Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where you might think we're looking at something which I looked at already because I do actually have a video for Beast Wars Neo Kurata on the channel already. But yes, today we are looking at Beast Wars Neo Kurata again, but this is not the same Kurata, both in terms of the fact that I actually sold that Kurata a while ago and now I have this, but also because this is a different version. This is actually the Takara Beast Wars Anniversary version of Kurata. And the reason I got this is because I just, for one thing, really like Kurata, but also the colors on this version are just much more appealing to me. One of my big complaints about the original version of Kurata, which I had before, was that the colors were a little bit too vibrant in some places, in particular the deco on the back. It looked like ketchup and mustard just sprayed on the back there. Looking at the back of this version of Kurata, it's both a much more subdued yellow and red, it looks a little bit more natural, like something you'd actually see in nature, and it's got this kind of brownish, I don't want to say wash to it, but it kind of has that vibe that just makes everything look more, not necessarily realistic, but it makes it look much less over-the-top colorful, which I think works really well in this case. And there are some more details which we'll look at more in robot mode. But yes, this is, other than that, the same figure. It's got that extremely segmented tail with the very floppy end. Just does that. But you've got a bunch of ball-jointed segments leading up to that point. It still does the really fun push the button at the top to make the jaw open thing, and there's the little water bladder squirter thing if you wanted to fill with water, so you could have the Cobra actually spit, which is cute. And I just really prefer the more subdued color scheme of this version of Kurata. It's just not quite as over the top, which I like a lot. Also, because of the new colors that are added in the robot mode legs, like the silver that we see on the sides here and then some silver on the torso, it kind of makes the look of the inner Cobra hood a little bit more cohesive. Like, the colors just kind of seem to carry through. The molded detail is already doing it, but now there's this silver that goes along the side and continues down through the rest of the hood, and part of that is the inside of the robot mode torso rather than the legs, so it just continues that color a little bit more, which works really well. In terms of size, Kurata's essentially a deluxe. Granted, the mass distribution here is very weird, because you've got like this snake ball at the front and then just like this really thin tail going around the back. But looking at him next to the standard deluxe squad, you can see that if you look at just the balled up robot that makes the head of a Cobra part, it's a little bit smaller than a standard deluxe. Obviously, this would be a massive snake if this was to scale, but I think it still kind of gets the deluxe point across. Just for the heck of it, here's Kurata with a couple of current Beast Wars characters, that being Kingdom Dinobot and Kingdom Black Arachnia. And here he is with the Duck Tank. So yeah, the snake mode is still really cool. I think this is a lot of fun to mess around with, and you can get some posing out of it. Mostly just, angling the tail and stuff, but you can do a little bit with it, and I still think the little push the top of the head to make the mouth open gimmick is really fun. Kurata's transformation is simultaneously simple and a little bit tricky. There's not a lot in terms of steps that are necessary to get him into his robot mode, but remembering how to position certain things can be a little bit of a challenge because, as with a lot of Beast Wars Neo stuff, there are certain points where there's no real place for something to tab or lock into. It's still very doable, it's just a little bit more complex than you might think at first. And what we're left with is a very cool looking robot cowboy wearing a snake as a poncho, which is exactly the same as the original Kurata, but again, I just like the colors here more. I really like the added silver and the white in the torso. Like, a lot of what's happening with the midsection is great. I particularly like, too, how the way, and this is something I didn't really notice with the original Kurata, but the way it's sculpted, the details in the center part of the torso get completely covered up, or almost completely covered up, by the snake head in robot mode. So when you've got those colors separated out more like you do here, where you've got the white in the center and the silver along the sides, when that snake head is in place, it practically covers up almost all of the white. And so what you're left with is this shape that's got this very dark kind of inner poncho thing happening around the sides, and then a much brighter kind of silver, white, and copper, gold, whatever color that is in the center. It just makes the robot torso stand out much better. And of course, you've also got the silver that carries through into the robot mode legs, parts of the feet, and the one bicep. I just think the silver looks nicer than what we had with the original Kurata. And coming back to that more subdued color scheme, I think it works really well here because Kurata has this image of a cowboy wearing a duster, or a poncho. For me at least, granted I'm not a big Westerns guy, but for me, a cowboy wearing a poncho like that, typically it's like a little bit dirty and dingy because, you know, he's out in the desert, prairie, whatever, rough and tumble, blah, blah, blah. And so having a more subdued color scheme like this with Kurata works much better to me because it does give him this impression of the robot mode itself looks rather bright and relatively clean, but then the snake part, the poncho, has a slightly more dirty feel to it, just because of that slightly brownish wash to it and the slightly more subdued colors. So it really helps to drive home this idea of he's wearing this snake as a poncho and the poncho got dirty because he was out doing robot cowboy snake stuff, I guess. I don't know. I really like Kurata's look, but I really like the Takara Anniversary version of Kurata because of those colors. It's the same head design from the original Kurata. I don't know offhand if the paint's any different. I'll pop up a side-by-side if it is different, but it's a smirking robot cowboy, basically. He's got what looks kind of like a cowboy hat on, and it is very robotic, both the head and the quote-unquote hat. It's a really cool look. I really like Kurata because he's weird, but like he's weird in a cool way, and it still kind of gets the point across. It's such a strange design, but it's also such a cool design, and I love how this is like very obviously a Beast Wars Neo figure because it's so weird, but it's a really good Beast Wars Neo figure because it works really well outside of the context of Beast Wars Neo. I feel like this is a figure that people who aren't into the way that Beast Wars Neo does really weird robot modes out of particular animal modes, like, you know, long rack, mock kick, like all that stuff. Very weird. I like long rack a lot, but it's a very, very weird thing. But Kurata, I think, just walks that line between what most people might be expecting from Transformers toys and what people who are familiar with Beast Wars Neo might be expecting. In terms of articulation, the head does turn a bit because of the way that it's attached. It's on this kind of stalk that makes it a little bit tricky to position, but you can turn the head a bit, you can look up and down a bit, and you can tilt side to side quite a bit. The arms are also a little bit weird because the way of the transformation, you've got this Cobra hood hanging over his body so it hampers the shoulders a bit, but also the left arm, or the arm on the right side of the screen, so his left arm, it's attached from the back rather than attached to the torso. So because of that, it can swing out, it can swing forward, but it can't really swing back much. You get a bicep swivel that happens just above the elbow, which I think is totally fine, and you get a 90-degree bend on the elbow in both directions, which is in service of the transformation, basically. The right arm is just full of ball joints, so many segments. The primary connection where it connects to the body is effectively useless in robot mode because it's tucked underneath that poncho, but what counts as the shoulder is a ball joint and you get all that range. What counts as an elbow is a ball joint. What counts as another elbow is a ball joint, and then what counts as either another elbow or a wrist is a ball joint. The hips are also ball joints, have a pretty decent range, but because, again, of that giant Cobra hood poncho, you don't get any backwards motion. There is nothing at the waist because of the transformation, which I think is fine. The knees are also ball joints, and you get, because of the transformation, an incredibly deep bend if you bring the legs forward far enough. That also acts as the primary thigh swivel. The hips also give you a little bit of swivel because it's on a ball joint. And then the ankles are also on ball joints, so you get a little bit of side-to-side rocker, a lot of back-and-forth rocker, and you can rotate. So the posability on Kurata is actually pretty decent. He can pull off some pretty decent poses, and again, he looks really cool. As for how big he is in robot mode, well, here he is with the Standard Deluxe squad, and he's a little bit taller than Standard Deluxe, but he's not huge, which I think is fine. He definitely stands out, though. And here he is with a couple of more contemporary Kingdom figures, and you can see he sits kind of between Small Deluxe and Voyager. And I feel like while he does work with Dinobot and Black Arachnia, because, you know, they obviously all turn into animals, there's definitely a playfulness to Kurata's design that is missing with Dinobot and Black Arachnia. I mean, some of it may just be because we're so used to the designs, but a lot of the classic Beast Wars character designs are like humanoid robots that are obviously made up of animal parts. But then you've got Kurata, which is a humanoid robot obviously made out of animal parts, but there's like a really obvious, slightly cartoonish, tongue-in-cheek theme to it. I really love that playfulness. I wish that some of the classic Beast Wars stuff had that, but it was they were kicking things off. I understand why that playfulness came later. And lastly, here he is with the Duck Tank. So that's it for Beast Wars Neo Takara Anniversary, whatever this thing is called. It'll be in the title, Kurata, and I love this. I mean, I really loved Kurata before, but those colors were just a little bit like, just a little bit too bright for my liking. This is just beautiful. Like, for me, this is the best deco of Kurata that's out there. Unless there's like a Nemesis Colors version, because you all know how much I like the Nemesis Colors, but this looks great. As I said, I really love the slightly more subdued colors that this guy has, and it really does lend itself to that more kind of dirty poncho look. But I also love the added silver that they put on the legs and the feet and the torso. The colors are great. The design was great on its own, but put him in a better color scheme, and I'm all about it. This is great, and I'm so glad I somewhat spontaneously snatched this guy off of eBay, because this was quite a surprise. That is going to do it for Kurata, this version of Kurata. What do you all think of this guy, or the original version of Kurata? So that's going to do it for this version of Kurata. What do you all think of this mold in general, or either of the color schemes that are out there? Because as I said, I vastly prefer this one. I don't think the other one's bad, I just think this is the best version that's out there. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you like this video or any of the other videos that I've done and want to support the channel outside of watching the videos in the first place, I do have a Patreon. It is a single $1 tier. That's the only one I've got, and that gets you early access to new videos, access to the occasional behind-the-scenes posts that I might make, access to work-in-progress posts for customs that I might be working on, that kind of thing. And eventually I'm hoping, if I get enough people, I want to start doing polls, so patrons will be able to weigh in on channel stuff, basically, in the future. With that all out of the way, thank you everybody for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.